Well, hello. Today I'm going to talk about sports card investments, what I'm looking for in particular when I'm buying cards. I want to share it all with you and I want to get your feedback. Stick around. Hello to all my sports card collectors, investors, all of my collectibles friends. How are you doing? Crazy hair don't care, as my daughters would tell me.
May I tell you what I think happened? Alrighty then.
If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. We come out with almost daily sports card and collectibles content, and we will keep it coming. And also a little tappity tap on the notification bell. And a like if you like what you hear. It's just right over here, that little button that helps the YouTube algorithm find the stuff. So that would be awesome if you could hit the like button if you do like what you hear. Also, connect with me on Instagram at The Personal Finance Dad, and then I'm on Twitter as well. If you like Twitter, The Personal Finance Dad, I like going back and forth with you all and cards, sharing cards, etc., collectible stuff. It is a good time. All right, guys, I thought this would be good timing for this type of a video because the landscape in sports cards has changed. It is not the everything goes up type of world that we were living in over the last couple of years. Over the last 7-8 months, it has corrected, or it is correcting, still correcting. Many will tell me it is still correcting. Many will tell me that it's all going to zero. I've heard that plenty of times. Fair enough. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. And then there are also people that are saying, hey, this is a good buying time. It's buy low and all that stuff. So I'm kind of listening to all of it. I'm taking it all in like I do with all types of investing. I think that's really important. You take in all the stuff, and viewership gives me really, really good feedback on the market on the ground too. Between, vlogs and card shows that I see on YouTube as well as other content creators, and then viewership gives really good insights as to other things that are going on that I think are important. So I take all of it in, and I think that's important for everybody. All right, so first things first, when I'm looking to buy a card, and for the most part, I will say, guys, I would say the vast majority of what I'm buying are long-term holds for me at this point. Am I looking to potentially move up a grade or a couple of grades for particular cards? Yes, so that might be where I do move out of a card, but it's not because I don't like the card. It's like I'm sold on this particular card. I really like this card, but maybe I've got a 7, I'd like to get an 8, or maybe I've got an 8, I'd like to get a 9, or a 5 to a 6, or whatever it is. And so that's where I might look to make a change. But all in all, I really like the long-term plays. When we think of investing, a lot of folks, they're investors, and then, something bad happens, the market sinks and they sell, they panic sell. And I think that kind of goes back to if you are a believer in the card, the player, the set, then, in many, many cases, it pays to just stick it out. And that's no different with any type of investing. You look at that on the equity side with the stock market, on the real estate side, there's a lot of panic selling, which then creates buying opportunities. And that's really how the wealthy get wealthier, if we're being honest. We're just talking big picture stuff here now, but the financial crash of 2009 in the United States, the wealthy got wealthier because they had the cash to go in big when everything sunk. When equities, the Dow Jones was at what, 5,500 at one point? 5,500. Can you imagine if you have serious cash and you're moving your chips in to play into the market at 5,500 was the total Dow Jones, and what is it now, 35,000 or something, whatever. And real estate is really no different. You have real estate is not quite the same type of volatility, but it's similar, especially in certain markets. And so this is not different in traditional investing as well. It's not. And there's ups and downs, there's volatility in all sorts of different things. In collectibles, there's a big importance set on rarity / scarcity, and that can be kind of tricky as well. I'm going to talk about a few different things here, and we'll stop there. We'll come back to that particular point. So my first one is, do I love the thing? Do I love it? Am I okay being stuck with it? Is it something that, if I'm holding it long term, I need to like it. It can't be something where I'm willy-nilly on it. I need to really like the player, the card. It's aesthetically pleasing. But that's the big thing with collectibles. That's different than other types of investments, is you've got typically a really cool item. You're buying collectibles that you're like, man, this is really cool. And then the added bonus is you believe that it's got long-term potential. Next, is it a prominent set or player? And we'll talk a little bit about kind of the vintage Hall of Famers compared to the prospects, and we can kind of talk through that a little bit, but and that might actually be a separate video in itself. We'll start with the set. I think for me, if I'm going to hold something long term, for example, I like memorabilia auto type cards, and Upper Deck is really my company of choice for that. So if I'm going back to the 90s, the 2000s, late 90s to early 2000s, mid 90s, 2000s, Upper Deck products. Of course, depends too on the sport that you're looking at as well. And I try to find, I'm kind of fortunate in a sense right now in this market because I am a big football card collector / investor. And if you compare football cards compared to basketball cards and baseball cards, they are just not the same price-wise. They don't get the hobby love for the legends. The legends, now look, if you're trying to buy a Bart Starr rookie card, a Joe Namath rookie card, there's a premium to pay for that, especially in a higher grade. But outside of kind of, there are a handful of big-time vintage rookie cards, there's a lot of open space there. There's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of players, a lot of Hall of Fame players, a lot of all-time greats in football that just price-wise don't touch where basketball and baseball are. So I think that's one part, is if you find a particular insert that's rare, scarcity you really like, what does it look like on the baseball side compared to, what does it look like on the football side compared to the basketball side? I'll use an example, the Platinum Portraits. Platinum Portraits is a popular basketball insert card, but what people don't realize is that there's also baseball and there's also football, but you have to do even more research because the football Platinum Portraits are the same type of scarcity as the basketball, but the baseball versions are far more common. It's exactly the same looking card. It's 97, I believe, is the Platinum Portrait set through metal, but that's kind of an interesting nuance that if you're not paying attention, you could think like, wow, the Platinum Portraits baseball is a great deal compared to football and basketball, that insert, but in reality, it's just far more common. I was looking at Derek Jeter being an option, and I was like, man, these are priced really low, and it was because they're just a lot more common in comparison to the other ones. So, when you're looking at rare inserts and rare parallels, you have to really be careful there and dig into, what were the pack odds for that particular sport, then compare the prices, then compare the grade, raw versus a graded copy, so you're really deep diving into this stuff when you figure, and that's just one example. That's another thing. There are a lot, if you really break down between baseball, basketball, football, probably hockey as well, although I haven't dug into hockey, maybe soccer, but there are a lot of rare inserts. And so which ones are already getting hobby love? Which ones do you think might get hobby love down the line? And so if you're thinking from a long-term perspective, you also have to think from that point as well. It's like, it might be scarce, but do people want it, or will they ever want it? You have to think about that. That's a question that, and the same goes with players. For me, I'm a huge New Orleans Saints fan. So there might be like, oh, this is a cool Saints player card, but the majority of football fans are not necessarily collecting Saints stuff primarily. And so it's combating our own biases and our own collecting love for certain things with what will somebody pay for this down the road if/when I decide to sell it in 20 years, 30 years or whatever, 10 years, whatever the case may be. I know that I am the endless optimist on this sort of thing. I'm the positive guy, but I do think that as the hobby matures and if, Fanatics is going to bring this to the mainstream and the masses and it becomes more and more of a regular type alternative investment for folks, whether it be sports cards, sports memorabilia, graded comic books, whatever it might be, I do think that more and more people dig into these type of, to the scarce stuff, to the rare stuff. Thinking long term, if it's a memorabilia card, so if it's a patch card, if it's a game used, whatever, well, that's what I'm looking for. I need it to be game used. I can't have it be player worn or players saw it from across the room, jersey from Walmart, cut it up and threw it in the card. No. I need it to be, game used.
So it'll be 1st and 10 at the 34.
get some help if you're going to block that guy.
And frankly, there is a lot of stuff out there. Again, if you're going back to the 90s, 2000s, there's a lot of stuff that is out there in the universe. It's just a matter of digging for it. There's so much focus on kind of the newer products and what's new coming out. There's so much to look back on. And so that's where I think that over the last few years, I've graduated on to where I did. It's funny. The thing that's really hilarious is when I got back into the hobby, I was buying vintage cards. So I bought a Joe Montana rookie card, a Jim Brown rookie card, a Pete Maravich rookie card. And then I got into some of the newer stuff, like the ultra modern stuff. I was like, oh, this is fun. And now I'm like reverted back to, okay, it's vintage stuff. It's inserts from the 90s, from the 2000s, et cetera, just the type of stuff that I like. But I think that's important to, kind of everyone's got their own hobby journey and figuring out what you want to have short term, long term. And I think it's interesting to debate because there's a lot of folks that are like, look, sports cards are just short term and get out. And that's fair. There's no right or wrong to this, and nobody knows what it's going to look like down the road. So, if you're just playing it on the short term, that's totally fine. If you're only on the long term, that's fine too. I do a little bit of both, but it's probably at this point, it's like 90% long term for me, 10% short term. The thing I look at I'm going to throw out a player, not any particular cards, but I'm going to throw out a player that I bought into. I've got some of his cards, Jason Tatum for the Celtics. I don't have 100 of his cards or anything. I've got, probably a handful of his rookie cards, but Jason Tatum is an example of a young prospect type NBA player that I feel has a lot of good potential. And if the price is right, I don't mind kind of getting in and just seeing what happens with him. Now, a lot of folks will come back at me and say, yeah, but Jason Tatum, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't won a championship. He hasn't won an MVP. I'm not necessarily buying it in case he wins a championship or an MVP. I'm okay with in a couple of years if the Celtics pick up, I don't know, Giannis, as the Celtics pick up, it won't be Giannis. I'm just throwing out a name here. There's a big splash in free agency. All of a sudden the Celtics are, the number one seed in the East, and Jason Tatum is leading the way with those guys, and his cards get a bump. Maybe I look to move off of it at that point in a couple of years, in 1 year, whatever it is, or in 5 years, whatever it is. But that's my point with it. A lot of people are like, oh, well, they're never going to have a Hall of Fame career. I look at it more as, is this person going to be relevant in the NBA or in the NFL? The NFL is trickier because of injuries, but if we're using basketball as an example, are they relevant over the next 3 to 5, maybe 7 years? That to me, that is a short-term window of time where I think good things could happen with that particular player, and the price point is right for me to get into it. So Jason Tatum is one example. You could look at a lot of these young players in that kind of the 21 to 26 age range where, they haven't quite won a title yet. I mean, how old is Giannis? 27, 28, and he just won his first title. That's when a lot of times it starts happening. You have the first 5 years of a career where there's not much going on. They're kind of figuring it out. They're doing good things, don't get me wrong, but they're not necessarily winning titles. And so, but then as they get into kind of that, 25 to 30, then you start to see what's going to happen with that player. So if you're in enough early, if you're early enough before that little wave, then that can be helpful. So for prospects, that's what I think of, is I'm looking not necessarily as, is this person going to be the next Michael Jordan or LeBron James? They don't need to be, depending on the price. They just need to have some excitement around them. And so I'm looking at, like for Tatum, big franchise, he's an all-star. He's proven that he can play in the league. He's made some big shots. He's just not on a contending team right now. But I like that scenario. Because to me, that just means that the Celtics just need a couple more pieces, and then who knows? Who knows what happens? If you have a player like that or a couple of players, put them down in the comments because I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I know there's also people that get in on players that are not that are not all-stars yet, that are kind of under the radar, that they're kind of hoping will get more playing time. Of course, lower price points for those players. So it's a bigger risk, but a higher upside a lot of times because, they're priced because they're not getting enough minutes. They're not, they're scoring 10 points a game. It's risky because they might never score more than 10 points a game. They might never get in the game. They might be, retired in 2 years, whatever. But, it's a lower price point. I think a lot of people like the thrill of finding that next Giannis player where it's like, he was nobody, and then now he's on top of the world. It's extremely rare for it to happen, but I think that it's fun for people. That's kind of the sports betting side of it. Another great resource is Beckettcom. I do also collect autographs. And so a lot of times it can be helpful to know, does this player sign a lot of things? And frankly, there's a lot of signed stuff out there. There's a lot of auto cards. You'd be surprised, actually, if you look on Beckettcom and you just look up in that search bar, you just type in Kobe Bryant, for example. These guys have a lot, 2,000, 3,000 cards, individual different cards. And now Beckettcom doesn't necessarily have every single one, but it's a guide. It's, it gives you something to work from, and you can get an idea of how many different cards this particular player has signed. And I'm not talking about aftermarket cards. I'm talking about like cards that come in the packs, come like pack pulled cards, stuff that comes through a company that's already done, like Upper Deck, for example, is a company that does this. So it's getting an idea of how many of those are out there. Not if someone took the card to a game and then that particular player signed the card and then it was graded by PSA. That's not what we're talking about. The in-person signings. We're talking about the stuff that the companies went and that the companies guarantee as the auto. And so that Beckett.com site is a great resource to see, okay, Michael Jordan has this many autographs, and sometimes they'll even show you how many are on card compared to sticker. They'll show you how many patch cards there are for that particular player. Look at Larry Bird, look at Joe Montana, look at whoever you want to look at, but you can make comparisons like price-wise to see how is this priced right for how scarce it is or not, or is it priced too high? Are there how many? This person has 5,000 autographed cards. Maybe that's not the right price point. So it gives you kind of a nice little way to compare and contrast. So guys, I look for just first off, again, it's that whole cliche of collect what you love. I also invest in what I love, but I'm also realistic to the fact that I can't just buy Bobby Hebert rookie cards and Craig Ironhead Hayward, Dalton Hilliard rookie cards as a Saints fan and expect that to be an amazing investment down the road. Maybe it will be, I don't know, but my point is it's kind of like with fantasy football where you sometimes you draft players that you don't like, because you know that they're gonna do well, or you feel like they're gonna do well. It's kind of like that for me with this too. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. Let me know some of your thoughts in the comments. Again, I always learn a ton from viewership. So for your long-term holds, if that's what you're into, let me know your criteria for that. I'd like to know just kind of what you're digging into, what you like, and if it's short-term, what you like to do short-term strategies. I wouldn't mind hearing about that as well. Probably have more videos on this also, just to kind of break things down. There's so many different nuanced points in here that you can make into different videos. But anyway, let me know kind of your thoughts. Appreciate you being here. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.